All righty. So let's see. So you all are students, correct? Is that what um, I'm getting from this? Let's see. Let me get a feel for who's all on here. Great. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share with you a presentation. Austin, Nathan, you are a student. Let's see. Let me go into share. Again, if you can't see my presentation and for some reason I freeze up, you'll know why I turned off my video. I know that technology is kind of strange. First off, like Loyola was saying, this is going to be a series of gatherings for us. And I titled it Gatherings for Wellness because I feel like, we come together to discuss things. I wish it was in person so we could sit around and see each other's faces and get more of the connection that we should be getting. I know over Zoom, we can kind of just picture ourselves. If you take a minute and just take a deep breath and just imagine that we're all together in a space, in a circle. And so I'll imagine someone is sitting next to me here and next to me here. And so I really do like to hold the space in a circular fashion because I feel like we gain connection through that, but also we can see each other's face. And traditionally, if you're traditional or you understand your native roots or ceremony, we often hold space in a circular fashion. And it's really important for me as an individual to come together in that way. And so, um, first off, I want you to welcome you all into this space. And I'd like to see that circular form and just take that into consideration moving forward. Okay. Um, so here is an overview of this evening. We're going to do a welcome and introduction. We're going to talk about some of the guidelines to remember in this space. We're going to talk about who are you and what do you carry or what do I carry. Mental health, we're going to mention that a little bit, what exactly it is. And then we're going to talk about the wellness wheel and the medicine wheel and what that looks like. And then we're going to go into belonging to interdependence. Um, this first meeting is going to be more focused on self-assessment and really taking that scan of yourself as an individual, what you are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so we're going to do some discussion on, what does work for you, what is currently working for you, what are your strengths, but also what areas am I lacking in, and so as an Indigenous woman, I'm constantly going into certain situations or in a professional field or just working with individuals one on one. And when I go into those certain situations, I have to constantly think about myself and wondering, like, how do I relate to this person? What areas do I need to improve on? And, I'll walk away and assess the situation. I'll assess my thoughts, what I did good and what I did wrong. And so I think this will be helpful for you in any situation, especially in the college field and learning and gaining those new skills. This is something that really will be helpful. As a social worker, that's something that we're trained to do on a daily basis is to self-assess. And so for those of you who are in other fields, this could be helpful for you throughout your careers. Then we'll go into what areas need focus, suggestions for improvement. We're going to talk about, not necessarily faults. We're not perfect. We're constantly improving in our lives, correct? And so we're going to talk about that and then making a plan of action and what does that look like and what are the steps that we need to take to um, plan for those changes. Okay, so the answers are coming in. So how do we make this a safe space? So building trust with one another, no judgment, judgment-free zone, anonymous responses that everyone can see, which we're doing right now, establishing relationship confidentiality, that's very important. What we say here stays here, security, feeling, understanding of one another, and no judgment. To be kind to everyone regardless of gender, identity, and sexual orientation, that's very important. To understanding inclusivity, how are we being inclusive of other people who are different than us? No judgment, no judgment zone, sharing the talking floor with others. Depending on what is shared, confidentiality is key. Respect and confidentiality, respecting one another, confidentiality. Allow me to be frank about my own circumstances, not sugarcoating it. And that's very real in Indigenous communities. And I will put a trigger, not a trigger, yes, a trigger warning on this one, because sharing your story can often cause others to be triggered. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. And I'll give you some information at the end. But if you ever feel like you need to talk to someone because you are being triggered, you're welcome to reach out to some of the mentors or individuals in your community. So that's a really important one right there. Everyone's opinions respected. I see a safe space as a group of people who don't judge you. They don't make like fun at or reprimand your problems. Actually, a good example of this is me and my other friends would group together and just talk about our problems. Awesome. No judgment, confident, respect one another, open discussion, meaning differentiating opinions don't cause a fight. Respect towards each other. Difference in opinions. We all have our opinions, and that's a really good point, is that we're not fighting, we're sharing in the information, and it's very important to recognize how you respond to different individuals. And that's all part of mental health and being well. And so we'll kind of discuss that here in a minute. Understanding, listening, respect, welcoming environment, be yourself, encouraging each other, trust, just listen to one another, and no judgment. So if you have more, you can always put that in there. I will have this presentation sent out to the mentors, and if you want to add more in the future, you can do that. And I'm glad you were able to assist the others who didn't get the code in time. Thank you for that. And so go ahead and we'll go ahead and go forward. So respect, confidentiality, no judgment, creating an inclusive environment, listening, respecting each other, loving each other, supporting each other. Those are all very important aspects for our meeting today. So with that, I appreciate you all creating your guidelines for this meeting. We're going to move forward and we're going to start discussing what we need to discuss today. So this is put into a word cloud, and now you can see what are the strengths. What are your strengths? What do you bring to this discussion? And as Indigenous people, we all have strength, right? We all carry and we possess things that we've learned through our parents, our grandparents, or all of our relatives, our ancestors that have been brought down through years and years of resiliency, right? So I'm going to read off a couple of these, and let's see. So the one that's glaring at me is caring, resilient, trustworthy, compassion, awesome, provider, hard worker, determined, giving, loving person, culture, patient, spiritual, writing, prayer, goal-oriented, dragonborn, public speaking, having your grandchildren, quick thinker, being open-minded, social butterfly, good listener, empathy, independent, honest, determined, prayerful, organized, confident, courage, hands, resilient, reliable, organization, tradition, very direct, great listener, encourager, staying positive, justice. These are all awesome. Loyalty, family, strong, creative, humor, hand-eye coordination, right? That's really true. Justice, truthful, very direct. Awesome. So you see that these are all of the strengths that you bring to this gathering, and this kind of lets you see that we all carry gifts within us, right? And that we all have teachers who basically taught us these things. And so recognizing that and bringing that into the circle and talking about this just brings us to a good space. And I like to do things from a strength-based approach. Not to say that there's not burdens like you were talking about, not to say that there's no struggles, because in my perspective, you know, there's always the good and the bad. And that's kind of the balance that we live in, just going through life, that no matter how good things go, that we will eventually have some burdens, right? And no matter where we are in life, we're going to experience the good with the bad. And so, how are we going to hone in on our strengths as individuals, and how are we going to use our strengths to overcome some of these burdens, but also to cope with some of these burdens? And you know, you talk a lot about Indigenous communities and some of the things that we face day to day within our families, or with what we're seeing cousins or aunties or uncles go through. And you're all off at college and you're all doing great things. And it's really important that you, as a leader, I'm going to call you all leaders because you all are leaders. You're gaining information, you're gaining knowledge at college. And so that just rhymed. You're gaining knowledge at college. You're gaining that information to become a leader, right? You're currently in training to step into the role as a leader. And that is something that is very, very amazing. And it's kind of like, it's kind of, you kind of get a little jittery, right? Because you're next in line, right? And so someone behind you is looking at you as elder, and someone behind you is looking at you to teach them eventually. And so that's kind of just the circle of life, and what we're going through is that you're going to step into that leadership role, you're going to step into that elder role. And so what are the strengths and what is going to help you to be successful in the future? And so this is kind of the discussion that I like to go through. What are your strengths? But it's also self-assessment, right? It's also taking a look at who you are as an individual. What are you currently doing? What is your role in your life? What is your role in the college? Or what is your role when it comes to going back to family? Are you the fire keeper? Are you the dough maker? Are you the mom who's taking care of the kids? Are you the water bearer? You know, what exactly is your role? And so we each play a role within our communities, but also when we're outside of our community, and what does that look like, and where we all contribute to the community and our Indigenous communities across the United States. And so I want to leave that here with you. And so taking a picture of this would be great if you want to take that, and it just gives you some focus of and reminder of who you are as an individual. And I just see that some items have been answered again. A loving mother, traditional, hands, humility, art, and those are all great things. So take a picture of that or screenshot it because this is awesome. I love it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the presentation. If I can go back to, there we go. So next up is mental health. And so the basic Western description of mental health provided by CDC is mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So it affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and make healthy choices. And mental health is important at every stage of life from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. And so this kind of gives you a Western perspective of mental health. But as Indigenous people, mental health is basically ingrained in everything that we do, right? Our emotional, our psychological, and our social components, they all wrap around into our physical, emotional, spiritual, and taking into consideration all of the other components that make us up, right? Not only those four that are in the middle, the intellectual, spiritual, physical, emotional, but also the others that are not really talked about, the social, occupational, the environmental, and the financial, right? And these are all components that affect our mental health. And so if I'm not feeling like I belong socially, I might experience some bad mental health, right? If I'm struggling financially and I can't pay the bills, I might be experiencing some repercussions or some depression, right? Occupational or some stressors, basically what financial burdens bring us is stress. Environmentally, if we're living in an area where we're not able to, experience the outdoors or, go outside because of hazards, that's going to bring us down. Occupational, right now you're all at college and you're doing great things, you're learning, and so you're actually improving in this area. You're gaining knowledge so that you're better prepared out in the workforce, so that's a great thing. As for intellectual, spiritual, physical, and emotional, as you see that here, they're all components and they all play into one another. And so if you look in the middle of this individual is the center. I like to put one individual in the center, and it's called person in the environment. And so looking at an individual and how much the environment is playing a role in that person's life. And so the main individuals that we turn to are our friends, our mentors, our family, and our support. And if you identify one person, you could probably put them in one of those categories. So these individuals are very important in our lives, and I say that these are people that we can turn to in time of need. And understanding this and knowing that all of these components play into one another is really important. And I was just talking about belonging and where do we belong as individuals. Oftentimes we go off to college or we go into settings where we are the only Indigenous person in the room, right? And it can feel a little bit lonely and we can feel outside of our comfort zone. But looking at what our role is and how we contribute and what we're advocating for as Indigenous populations, and remembering our teachings and remembering those strengths and what we stand for. And this is kind of going into the social justice part of this, is what are we advocating for and how are we bringing up our voices as Indigenous people when working in communities who are often lagging with Indigenous knowledge or Indigenous approaches. And so that's another whole discussion that I'll pull myself back to. This discussion is belonging, and what does that look like? How do you belong? I think that a question that you can ask yourself is, how do you know you belong? If you want to take yourself off mute and answer this question, that would be great. How do you know you belong? Acknowledgement goes a long way, right? Goes a long way. And when you introduce yourself in your clanship and you start to build those relationships with one another and say, you're my Nolly, or you're my grandmother, you're my sister, it's a really powerful thing. How else do you feel like you belong in a place? Safety is a big one. And feeling safe in a particular space, whether that's spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. I see the comment in the chat about I struggle with belonging even back home. I think the only time I feel like I belong is when everyone in the room likes me. Support and acceptance and wanted. And this is kind of where we go into the mental health aspect and how you feel in a specific space. If you're not feeling safe, you need to create those boundaries, right? And that's all part of healthy relationships, healthy, creating those healthy spaces. What if you're not feeling safe, if you're not feeling included or accepted, what are those boundaries that you need to create to maintain safety, to maintain acknowledgement or inclusivity? I like to create boundaries in terms of relationships that I have with family. Sometimes we all can't get along. That's the truth. You know, sometimes we go back home and people are in a different space, right? They might be binging or using, and you might not do that. Or they might pull you along and just, you know, get in trouble. And that's basically what happens. I mean, I don't deny that. And that's kind of something that we need to start to understand, is how do we create those healthy boundaries and saying, being able to say, you know, that's not something that I do anymore, and being upfront and advocating for ourselves. Advocating for yourself and making your voice heard is something that is very much appropriate to creating those boundaries. But belonging in the sense of feeling like you are included in a space can often be hard, especially if you're around a lot of individuals who are non-native. But I think that feeling secure with what you're saying, and you're on a mission and a vision to get something done, I think that that can take a different shape, and um, you can see why you're there and how you need to get through that space. I know it's difficult sometimes, facing that day to day, but we're going to start talking about some coping skills here in a bit. We're going to talk about areas of improvement. And when you're going into a space where you feel uncomfortable, you know, do that self-scan and that self-assessment. How am I reacting? What am I seeing? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And why am I thinking that? Why am I feeling this way? And really identifying those specific things that are causing you to respond and react. I think that's part of the self-assessment, is going back to that presentation that I showed you with the medicine wheel. Let me go back. Does anybody else have any other input? Okay, I see the chat. Establishing the boundaries by stating clearly your need or point to the individual or group that this is my comfort zone or space and you need to have respect for it. Yes. Clancy, that is 100% true, that you need to state your boundaries and you need to state it clearly so that the other individual knows exactly where or what not to do. And that's healthy. That's establishing those boundaries and establishing those guidelines that you have for yourself, just like we did in this meeting. How do we create that safe space? And so take that with you in what you do in your daily life. It can be really helpful. Let me go back to the presentation and just taking a look at the medicine wheel, wellness wheel that we were discussing. Amber, I know you like to go off of people's vibes, and sometimes that can be deceiving because, you know, people's body language, you might misinterpret the body language, you might misinterpret an eye roll or a shift in the body. I often like to disregard some of those things because I feel like some of those things can be, yes, they're passive aggressive, but I don't like to focus too much on that and how it affects me. And I am in control of myself. And so that's how I'm going to respond, is making sure that I myself, the only person I can control is myself, right? And so really understanding that if I'm experiencing microaggressions or racism or whatnot, that I have the choice of not responding to you. I have the choice of not getting angry. I have the choice of stating clearly what my needs are. I have the choice of making those healthy boundaries and stating to that person that that is not acceptable. That's not how we do this. Yeah, I might feel angry and I might say something, but again, the choice is all mine in my reaction and how I conduct myself and how I take in those specific vibes. Um, and so that's a whole nother topic area, but yeah, so self-assessment. um, we are going to go into self-improvement. And so taking this into consideration, this medicine wheel, wellness wheel, if you can do a quick scan of yourself and think of some areas that you need improvement on. And then I will share the self-improvement. Here is the Menti and the code. What areas need focus? What areas need focus? And so go to menti.com, enter the code in 4750-9575 and fill that out. Menti.com 4750-9575. I'm going to stop share. I'm going over to Menti, so I'm going to stop. share. And I'm going over to Menti. I'm going to pull up the improvement. And see that you have some, you're slowly putting them in there. I see them coming in. Share this. Okay. Looks like some improvement areas that you can improve on. So there's a lot more discussion that can go on with these, and a lot more coaching and guidance that can be sought out in terms of each of these topic areas. And so perhaps doing a little more research or asking around, in terms of some of these areas like self-love. I think that's a journey, a lifelong journey within itself, because it takes a long time to love yourself, right? And that's a major one, because without loving yourself, I don't know what it looks like. I mean, without loving yourself, loving someone else is going to be difficult, right? And it might often be unhealthy, just coming from experience and talking about self-love. That's kind of what I've seen is, it's a lifelong journey, and you have to keep up with that. It is tough, and it's something that we're always discussing. You see it in, various rom-coms and various discussions about how do I love myself and how do you get there? Um, and only you can answer that, and only you will identify when you actually get to loving yourself. And I'm hoping that you can do some self-assessing, some self-improvement to eventually come to that place. Other areas, creating time for yourself, establishing boundaries, confidence, self-esteem, friends, listening, self-doubt. That's a big one. And I struggle with that as well. I mean, every one of us. And I think trying to understand how you can improve on that. We'll start to create a plan here in a minute, but take each of these areas into consideration. Think about these specific topic areas that you've provided here. Free time, honest about my feelings, gratitude, stop overthinking, studying, self-reflection, mental health. I can be too direct. What are some ways that you can address these? What are some ways that you can improve in this area? Giving myself more credit. How can you do that? What is the plan of action moving forward? When I say plan of action is, what are the steps? What are, we're taking a journey. This is a lifelong journey, right? So each one of our days is a step, right? That's what I like to think about. And how am I going to step tomorrow? And what does that look like for the next day? So what am I doing to create self-love? Am I, going out and really labeling looking at why do I feel self-defeated, or why do I not have self-love, and looking at ways I can establish self-love and creating that plan moving forward, and that I'm going to do this each week. So I want you to jot down on some paper or your computer or whatnot and write out 3 tasks that you want to do to address what you put here. And we'll do that here. Think about that. Okay. And we're going to do that in the next slide. So studying, cardio, humble, self-esteem, Elder Scrolls, What do you mean by Elder Scrolls? Can somebody elaborate? It's a game. Okay. If you want to prove an Elder Scroll, then be my guest. How are you going to do that? Is it practicing? Is it researching? So we'll use that as an example, is that this weekend I'm going to research how to improve an Elder Scroll. I'm going to look at some YouTube videos and get myself caught up on how to do certain things in the game. Or next week, I'm going to talk to 3 people about Elder Scrolls and I'm going to ask them how they improved in the game, right? I know it's a silly topic, but this is kind of what we should be doing on a daily basis. And then maybe week 3, I'm going to sit down and put what I learned, what I researched, and what I talked about into play and see um, how I do in the game and assess myself on how well I did it. And then if I want to improve again, you just keep doing it until you improve, 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 right? Practice makes perfect. And not my answer, by the way, great game. I mean, it's a real thing. Games are awesome, and they often take away from some of the things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and it can be a coping skill, right? Um, a lot of these things can be coping skills for mental health, or they can be coping skills for facing difficult times, right? Um, Eating right, patience, relaxation, cardio. Those are some of the things that we can do to cope with difficult times, right? Being social, being spiritual, having empathy, taking a break, not procrastinating. Um, so let's move into the next Menti, and it's going to talk about plan of action. And I want you to add in a way that you're going to address what we just talked about, some of your areas of improvement. Okay, let me stop share and let me get to that as soon as I am able to stop sharing. Okay. Okay, plan of action. Sure. So the next Menti is a goal without plan. A goal without a plan is just a wish, right? A goal without a plan is just a wish. So go to menti.com, enter in the 4260-1345. And I put on there, nay, all wishing, right? We always hear that. When I was writing this, I thought of that and I was like, hey, that reminds me of that comment. Menti.com 4260-1345. What is your plan of action in addressing these areas of self-improvement? If you can provide some words in there, that would be great. And to get more information about this Talkspace app, The mentors will be back on at the end of this presentation, but I'm pretty sure you can email them to ask more about the Talkspace app. Okay, your plan of action. So I want to leave you all with some of the last points. Elise and Zelo, I'll have the mentors talk about the Talkspace app a little bit more when they come in, and I'm pretty sure that's probably one of the areas that they want to talk about. And you might want to email Loyola or Adriana, I believe that was the name. Sorry if I got it wrong, but they have more information on that. So let me go to the Menti and let's see what you all wrote. I know it takes a lot to come up with a plan of action. It takes a lot to think about some goals that you want to pursue. So let's see. Yes, there are some. Cool. Okay, let me share this because right over here, share. Okay, name one of your goals. Okay, so get a 4.0 this semester. Just do it, relax with no hesitation. Remember that you are your own worst critic. Be the first college graduate in my family. Awesome. I want to stop being so hard on myself. Self-discipline, focus, grit. Yes, that's a lot of those are needed to face those areas of self-improvement, right? And complete your plan of action to reach your goal. Less social media, more face-to-face time, clean home, take time for self-care, stretch, yoga, walk in nature, and reflect on self. Those are great. Soul gems, get my anxiety and depression under control. And that's a tough one, but it can be done. What do you need to get there? Is it spending time outside? Is it taking daily walks? Is it journaling? Is it going to talk to someone, a professional or a counselor? Is it talking to a trusted individual? Those are great. You can be the sweetest peach on the tree, but some people just don't like peaches. And that's okay because everyone is different and not everyone is going to like you. And understanding that when you go into a situation is how do you respond to that? And identifying that response and not taking it in so much. I know a lot of us are empaths and we feel a lot. And so it's important to understand how you are reacting. Graduate, great, yes, we all want to graduate. I want to meditate, addressing my stress. That's a great way to address the stress. Eat healthier, studying, understanding that people all learn different and have different perspectives, live, exercise. Living is amazing. I think that is one area that, you know, if this one is you taking that into consideration, what exactly do you mean by that? Can someone elaborate a little bit more? If you're willing to, you can unmute. Journaling, meditation, patience, take a second to stop, think, and breathe. I need to stay active and take care of my stress levels by exercising and not eating junk food. Reminding myself that grief is normal. Stand up and stop doubting myself. My mother is now my angel. Grief is a very dynamic emotion. It's not moving in a consecutive way or not moving in a complete cycle like we think it is. It often pops up here and there. And so really talking to somebody about your grief will be really helpful. A lot of these areas, we need to talk to someone. So finding that trusted individual or finding that professional that you need to talk to, there's no shame in that. Finding a therapist that you're able to reach out to. And I know the app is something that will most likely help you in these situations, and real life people will be able to assist you. And I think that's an awesome, awesome thing. There's also resources like the 988 number. If you go on your phones and just dial 988, it'll automatically connect you to the prevention, the lifeline. It's often used for suicide prevention and saving people who are having thoughts of suicide. Yes, that's a normal part of our life, and it's something that we struggle with. I've had thoughts of suicide time and time and again, and it's just part of life that I've experienced, and I would never act on it. But some people cannot control that. And that's where you need to identify that within yourself, is that if you really need assistance and you really need someone to talk to, dialing 988 is going to get you someone on the phone. There's no shame in it, and just dial that number and you are able to talk to someone if you're not able to get to someone at the moment. Saying those prayers, taking some time to enjoy hobbies, dark candy recipes, affirmations, getting healthy, gain muscle, walk an hour each day for exercise. I can see the fall colors to lift my spirits as well. My plan of action is to continue improving on my fault, no procrastinating, and making friends. Yes. So the chat. No lollygagging. Yes, that's sometimes hard. And another individual says their mother is now their angel as well. There's a lot of loss and grief within Indigenous communities, and it can be hard at times. And so really finding those individuals who you can talk to about your grief, about the loss. Journaling often helps me at times. And reaching out to counselors who are available to you either at your school or with the mentors. I don't know if you're paired up with a mentor. That person is also a resource. I'm just reading the chat. Okay. But yeah, in terms of self-improvement and plan of action, self-actualization is also something that's really big on the when we're talking about this, is how do we achieve this? You know, how are we creating that sense of self-actualization? How are we able to move forward in a productive manner? So from a Western perspective, you know, we're often searching for how have we arrived, right? How do we gain success? How do we be that important person, right? But from a Western perspective, from an Indigenous perspective, it's innate, right? We're born and we're viewed as sacred from the start. Our children are sacred because they're going to be carrying the next generations. They're going to be our leaders in the future. And so that's kind of the difference between the Western and the Indigenous perspective, is that we all are sacred, right? We're all sacred beings on this earth, and we all have connection to one another, and we have connection to animals, the everything around us, right? And so taking that into consideration, sorry, I'm just getting a blank. Yeah, that's basically what, um, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But looking at reach out if in doubt, um, thinking about that, thinking about what I was just talking about in terms of grief, suicide prevention, reaching out to individual, having no shame in reaching out to someone. If you need to talk, if you need to process something, I know we've experienced the grief and loss with COVID, with being in a new place that can also bring up those feelings of loss because you're not connected to family or community. And that's something that's really real when going out to college and going out to another place, right? We feel disconnected. And so reach out if in doubt, writing down this number 988, you can call or text that line, find a trusted adult or another professional. Um, well, that's kind of what I was saying is taking that assessment, looking at that diagram that I showed you, and looking at all areas. Do you need to improve? Is it in terms of organization? Is it like, are you procrastinating? Like, I'll think about some of my deadlines, right? And that's what stresses me out. How am I going to prevent myself from doing things last minute? Or is it financial stress? What ways can I start to alleviate the finances? Or is it anxiety? Is it social? The only way that I can personally talk about that is actually practicing. If it's like public speaking, and that's kind of where my anxiety was stemming from, is that I would practice and practice and practice. If you have a hard time working with individuals and being social, maybe you practice. Maybe you get a friend and say, I'm having a hard time in this area. Can I practice with you on how to have a conversation or how to introduce myself? Or, I don't know exactly what area you're looking at, but identifying ways. And that I was talking about earlier, researching really helps. Um, Listening to individuals and talking to your mentors and identifying some of those areas that you need to improve on. And that is something that will take some lifelong journey in terms of, I like to say lifelong journey because it's just a constant thing that we all face that, right? But really talking through with a trusted individual and a professional who you can turn to. I would really look into a counselor or a therapist who can help you with that. And there's a lot of resources. I don't know exactly where you're at in terms of location. And I think that looking into a counselor could really help you. Malcolm yoga really helps me physically break up the muscle tensions that stress causes and that perpetuates stress. And then Willie states you are all worthy. Yes, yes. And I know it's tough to hear that, and it's tough to try to take that into consideration when there's a lot of things hitting you at one time, right? But look at all of your successes and look at all of your strengths, right? We had all of those strengths, list them all out, and I'm trying to understand, like, you are worthy and you are able to get things done. You are in college and you're doing all these great things. And so saying that to yourself every single day is, you are worthy. I am worth it. I can do it. And I love myself. And saying that, those different mantras and those different self, I'm not finding the right words right now because it's kind of late, but finding those words and those positive things can really help you. Malcolm, you'll thrive too, but life throws a lot at you first. Yes. And understanding, like I was saying, that we do have those hard times that come with life. And trying to find coping skills to deal with those difficult times in your life is really going to be helpful. Um, and I would turn it over to Loyola and Adriana. There's a lot of questions about the app and what does the app consist of, and can it help with addressing some of these areas like anxiety, depression, stress.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for sticking around. We do appreciate and value your time. That's the one thing too. So yes, the app, as you all may have heard already, you all have access to, not WhatsApp. I keep wanting to say WhatsApp. It's called Talkspace. It is completely free to you as a scholar. We sent out the links, and Adriana, if you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat one more time. Talkspace is an online therapy platform that you can access either on your phone or on, well, basically anywhere you get internet. And when you sign up, you'll input your information. And then when it says organization, just put College Fund. And then you go through this questionnaire about what you're looking for, because they really want to tailor what you're looking for to the type of sessions that will benefit you. And again, it's completely free service. You can set up as a text messaging, it's message based, or you can actually have virtual sessions with one-on-one with a counselor. If that's not working for you, that is okay. We can definitely look at other alternatives as well to looking for mental health providers. And that's the other thing too. If your provider is not working for you, it's okay. You can say, this isn't working. I'm not feeling it. And that's okay to say too. And you can always search for another one, or like, this person isn't really in line with my values. For sure, it's not one size fits all. So definitely feel free to explore a little bit about Talkspace. Have a question. Is it free to other college students? I don't believe so. Talkspace is a for-profit platform, so they do charge. But since you are all full circle scholars, it is free to you. Adriana, anything else you want to add in about Talkspace?
No, you covered everything pretty good, but yeah, it's definitely something to utilize right now, especially since it's free. I know a lot of colleges might have similar mental health clinics or services, but this one's going to be really easy for you to schedule around your time, flexible, and to meet online, whether that's over text message or you can video call somebody. And like Loyola said, you have every right to I guess kind of gauge how the counselor that you're assigned to kind of vibes with you. So don't be afraid to be picky. It's not being picky, it's your mental health. So definitely feel free. If something's not working or anything, you can always request to have a new person.
Yes, and advocating for yourself, what we were talking about earlier, and setting those boundaries, that's really important to maintaining your mental health and establishing that positive mental health. I did see, will the recording of this meeting be available somewhere? And I believe, yes, it will be.
Yeah, it'll be available. We just need to send it to our communications for them to edit out the student responses, just to respect your privacies.
Yes, absolutely. Those will be edited, and only, people who are trusted will review it, one person. And again, they're just looking for when Jacqueline is talking. So they'll just capture those moments. I think we're going to also share it on our YouTube account. College Fund does have a YouTube account, and that's where we've been posting a lot of our sessions that have been recorded, previous webinars. Any other questions or concerns?
I think we'll leave with you are worthy and I am worthy. So we like to, I don't know if you all are familiar with the GONA, but they like to do a you are worthy. And so put your phones down and do a you are worthy. And then we also do I am worthy. So understanding that we all are worthy. So I am worthy, and saying that to yourself. And sometimes it is hard to say that, but now is the time to start, right? So I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next meeting. And bringing in your input about self assessment and creating those plans of action and those goals, and thinking about that. So think about that when we meet again, and I would like to see each and every one of you at the next meeting, and you all have a good evening.
Yes, just right before we close out, I threw a link in the chat. This is a form. Please do fill it out. It takes like 3 minutes. It's just basically an overview of what are your thoughts so far. We love to have feedback. It's very important that, we're trying to meet scholars' needs where they are. We also have incentives that we're going to be sharing out. You can choose both, you can choose neither, you can choose either or. The first one is you will be receiving wild rice from Red Lake Nation Foods in Red Lake country. And then the second option is a $40 gift card. So all you need to do on that form is input your mailing address if you want the Red Lake rice, and input your email address if you want the $40 gift card. Again, you can take both. You can take neither. You can take either or. If you're like, I'm not really a fan of long grain rice, that's cool. But yeah, go ahead and throw it in that form, and of course, provide that feedback for us so we can make the next session even more catered to what you're looking for as scholars.
Hope you all will join us in the next session. Thank you again, Jacqueline. I'm sure that this all went really well, and I'm really glad that everybody showed up. We don't want to take up any more of your time, so have a good evening, and please take care of yourselves.